Good evening and welcome to Fridays Live with me, Raj Naik. Today I have with me a very dear friend. He's based out of London. He is a founder of one of the world's leading human insights company. He calls himself the Happiness Innovator. He is a sports enthusiast and a family man. Please welcome Tony Latter.
Hi, Raj. Tony, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Tony. I know a lot of viewers in Britain are also watching it today in the United Kingdom. So welcome to all our guests from the UK. Tony, tell me, what's the time there right now?
Yeah, it's just gone 1:30 here. So just after lunchtime.
Yeah, and how's it in London at the moment? People are working from home. They're going back to office. How's it going on at the moment?
Yeah, most people are working from home where they can. And with the lockdown, what's been really interesting is just seeing how people have changed their working ways. So where companies felt that people need to always be in an office, that's not the case anymore. I'm seeing a bigger level of trust where companies are feeling like they know that people working from home, they'll deliver what they need to deliver. And there's lots of benefits of being able to work from home as well. So personally, for me, it's great. And I'm seeing more of my children than I have done in years, and spending less time traveling on trains. So it's a win-win all around.
That's fantastic. I mean, so you're working from home at the moment?
I am indeed, yeah.
Yeah. Tony, I'm going to come back to you. I do a customary thing every time. All my people who support me on this show, who come regularly, watch it, I name about 10 of them, 10, 12 of them every week. That's my customary shout out so that they keep coming back and keep encouraging me on this show. So I just want to thank Ramesh Narayan, Shobha Nair, Gaurav Kapoor. Gaurav has a show of his own. I mean, you must watch it. It's on cricket and things like that. Mitrajit, Poonam Chadda Joseph, Shruti Divedi, Ambika Srivatsava, Prabhat Sinha, Karuna Krishnan Kuti from Dubai, Priyanka Chandok, my sister Sandhya Shanbag and Vidya Naik. I'm acknowledging you after 15 episodes. I should have done it right in the beginning. Gunjan Nandwani and Ganesh Rao. Thank you very much. And if I missed out people, week after week, I'll be giving these shout outs. Thank you so much. Tony, you call yourself Happiness Innovator. What does it mean? What does it mean? How did this name come about?
Yeah. So it really started with the Happiness Index, which is a company that you know well, Raj. And it's really about how do we as individuals, how do we take ownership of our own happiness, and what does that mean to each of us? But then also, how can we help promote and share that? And our vision is around freedom to be human. And one of the most basic things for us as humans is to be happy. It's what provides us with our energy. It's where our relationships come from. And when we're with people where we're feeling happy, then we have a good time. And it's all very much about how do we spend more time in that space. So around the innovation part is just about trying to make people aware of how we have an opportunity to control our own levels of happiness, and how there are things out there that can help us to do that. And for organizations, especially, about how important it is for them to have a happy workforce. There's a big piece around what actually happens to our bodies when we're feeling happy, and the chemical reactions that happen there. And that's the importance of why it's good to look at happiness and drive that innovation of happiness and promote that message to people.
Fabulous. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to, go a step back right now, because there are lots of questions I have on that. And for those viewers who don't know, I mean, here's a disclaimer. Tony Latter is my partner from the UK. House of Cheer has started up with the Happiness Index in London, and we have created our own proprietary model of measuring happiness quotient of people. And we are using the neuroscience analytical platform of what the Happiness Index has created, and also learnings and the best practices from their experience since they are operating in almost 86 countries. How many countries, Tony?
Yeah, it's just over 90 now.
90 countries. So we'll come back to that. I just want to hold that for a moment. Tony, I want to go back. I just want to start from your beginning, okay? Because I want to know you, get to know you better. And this is what the show is all about. It's
Yep.
about getting to know people, getting inspired by their journey. So, Tony, tell me a little bit about yourself, your childhood.
Yeah. Not surprising, it was a happy childhood. I'm the youngest of three brothers, so there were always people around. It was pretty competitive as well. Whatever games we were playing, we always wanted to win, and I think that competitive streak is probably about me wanting to always kind of prove myself, not to anyone else, probably just that I could beat my older brothers at something, whether that be cricket, football, tennis, whatever it may be, the games that we're playing. But yeah, I grew up in a pretty quiet place. It was a village just outside of London, and I feel really fortunate that we could be born anywhere in the world.
What's that village called? What's it? What's the place?
Yeah, it's a small place called Doddinghurst. It's about 30 miles outside of London. And like I was saying, I just feel really blessed that having the opportunity to grow up near a major city, so we could be born anywhere in the world. We don't get to choose where that happens. And being able to be close to somewhere like London, where it is vibrant, there's lots of energy, there's a buzz, the pace of life is incredibly quick. But then also being able to kind of live and grow up in a small village was great, because it gave us that freedom to kind of explore and just spend time kind of outside. And it was an amazing place to grow up.
So, tell me a bit about your parents.
Yeah. So, yeah, my mum and dad grew up in a working class background. My granddad worked in a paper mill. My other granddad worked, there's a place where we grew up, near where we grew up, is a place called the Dartford Crossing, which is like a tunnel that goes underneath the River Thames. My granddad was a toll man, so his job was, as cars came over, was to collect the money and give the change back. And my parents have got amazing values, and that's what they've always instilled in myself, my brothers. And a lot of how I am now is because of how they've kind of helped shape us as people. And I'm a big believer that people are a kind of a reflection of the environment and the people they grew up around. And I feel really pleased that I'm really proud of my parents for the way that they've done that with me and my two brothers. So yeah, it's a really happy childhood. And my dad is quite competitive. And he always wants to win. He's been successful in his own right in his career, and a lot of that he's passed on to us as his children, and something that I look for in inspiration. And my mum is one of the kindest people that you'd ever meet. She'd always have time for people. She'd always listen to people. She's always there for a piece of advice as well. So yeah, I feel that between my parents, there was a really good balance there that I've tried to take as I've grown up, the best bits of both, and use that to kind of shape who I am as a person.
So when you were young, what did you want to become? I know you're a happy child. You're still a happy bunny now. So,
Yeah.
so what did you want to become when you were a child? What did you think you would want to become?
Yeah. So there was the usual, which was around things like wanting to be a footballer. That was a big one for me. Growing up, I was football mad, had played it pretty much 24/7 with my brothers. That was the number one. If I couldn't be a footballer, then I wanted to be an astronaut. And then kind of as time,
if not a footballer, what did you want to become?
I wanted to be an astronaut.
Astronaut. Interesting.
Yeah. There aren't too many space launches from
football. I can understand you are playing, and I think everybody in the UK is a football fan or a cricket fan. Yeah, but why astronaut? Where did that thought come from?
It was just a fascination that I had with space. And where I grew up, like I say, was in a village, and you could see the stars, you could see the moon really clearly. From my bedroom window every night when I went to sleep, I could look out and I could look up into the stars. And that was always a dream that I had. That was something that that I was really interested in and really passionate about when I was younger, growing up.
Okay, and then what did you study and what did you do?
Yeah,
What
so
was the next step?
yeah, so at school, academically, I did all right. But what I think school really taught me was more about how you deal with people, and not necessarily the subjects that you take and what you learn, but actually how do you cope in situations? How do you cope when you're talking in front of your class? How do you hold yourself? All of those kind of life lessons that you get through school. And I enjoyed school mainly because I got to play a huge amount of sport, spend time in team environments, which was really was something that I really enjoyed, being part of a team working towards a common goal. And then as kind of the years went by, I went to university, and that's where big things started to happen for me, where my life started to change quite significantly. Just being away from home, being able to kind of explore. And yeah, some big things happened, which were, and maybe we'll touch on these, but one of them was about how I met my co-founders at the Happiness Index. Another one is that's where I met my wife. And then I also learned how my brain worked. And that was a really interesting thing for me, because all throughout my life, you grow up and you go to school and you're taught in a certain way. And then actually, when I got to university, it wasn't about just being taught in a certain way. It was about experimenting and innovating and trying to find ways in which works for you as an individual. And I'm a very visual person. So being able to draw things out, and I think that's where the creativity and the innovation kicks in. But it was almost like you turn the light on. I felt like there was more, I could retain more information. My brain was firing in a different way. And it was just something that really inspired me.
Interesting. So you met your co-founders there, and you
Yep.
met your wife there, and
Yep.
obviously you learned how your brain is wired and how you think. So tell me, I mean, was that your first love, Tony?
What, my wife?
Yeah, I mean, I've asked you. I mean, you met her.
Yeah,
Was she?
yeah, absolutely. We were 20 when we met each other. Up until then, I think that it was, you just kind of know when you meet somebody. And I know that sounds kind of very like rom-com style background, but yeah, we were inseparable. And she's always the person that I can turn to. So whatever the situation is, I can always turn to for advice. She'd always help support in whichever way that she can. And she's always been like that. As we get older, and as like there were choices that needs to be made about starting a business or staying in my role, like in a job that was paying me very well, and her support through that was incredible. And there's also been some really difficult times where she's always the person that I can go to that will listen, who knows me better than anybody else, and is always the one that's just supporting me to follow what my dreams are and what I want to do. And so having the backing and the support of somebody like that is just incredible.
Yeah, I think that most spouses play that role of somebody you can confide in and somebody who will show you the mirror as well. So yeah. So then, I mean, how many years did you go? How long before you got married?
So it was 7 years before we got married. After about 5, lots of questions from people. When you're going to get married, and the expectation that that's going to happen. So we were 27 when we got married. And yeah, it's looking back at the day itself was great. It was, we got married in a place close to where we live. And it's an old castle from the 15th century. And yeah, just the history around the place is great. And it's somewhere that we go now and we take our children back to, and somewhere that we still visit and we think of very fondly.
Great. Now you're married. You got how many children? You got how many
2
kids?
boys. Yeah, 2 boys.
Yeah, great. So now I'm coming back to your co-founders. Was it in university? Did you know in university that you guys will come together? I mean, was that a plan or it happened by default?
No, there was no plan. Went to university, and I can remember kind of getting there, arriving, and we lived in a big building. There were 30 of us who lived there, and I'd say 10 of us now are still really good friends, and we meet up kind of a couple of times every year, and we still kind of reminisce about the old days. But we've all moved on, we've all got families, and it's been lovely to see how as a group we've kind of all grown and developed, and we've brought up families of our own. But with Matt and Chris, who are the co-founders of the Happiness Index, we never had this grand plan that one day when we were at university, we'd eventually start a business together. That happened organically. But there's something that did develop is just this friendship. And that's incredibly empowering when you're in a business with people that you trust, you've known for 20 years now. And with Matt in particular, Matt was the best man at my wedding and I was the best man at his. We traveled the world together. He's the godson to my 2 children. So being able to just be around 2 of your friends and go on this journey with each other. And you've been in businesses before, Raj, and with House of Cheer now, you know how important it is to have good people around you and share the journey that you're on with people that you enjoy being with. And yeah, I feel incredibly lucky that with Matt and with Chris that we're on this journey together and that I can share it with people that have been my friends and will continue to be my friends in the future.
You know, when you told me that you are best man at each other's wedding, the thought that came to my mind was the scene from Friends where they fight with each other, Ross and Joey, to be the best. So I was just thinking about it. It just crossed my mind. So tell me, how did the Happiness Index come about?
So Matt and Chris, they'd already been in business together before the Happiness Index. So they ran a marketing agency. And one day they just wanted to understand how happy their clients were to start with. And the idea being that if you can understand how happy people were, it will give you a red flag. If people weren't happy, then you could understand, try and talk to them, understand what was it that meant that they weren't happy with the service or the product or whatever it may be. And once you understood that and what would make them happy, then it was really easy to then for them to have the conversations and ask them what needed to happen, how could they improve it. And it was a way that they could do that organically and just in a way that was very human, and was in a way that was very light touch. And so they started to develop that, and their clients really enjoyed it. They then decided, well, if we're doing this for our clients, why don't we ask our employees as well? Because it's really important for us to understand how our employees are feeling. And once we understand how they're feeling, we can start to get a view of what the world looks like from their perspective. And then once we understand that at an individual level, but then also as a collective level, we can then start to, as a business, they could then start to put things in place that would help develop the happiness levels within the organization. And when we're happy, a chemical reaction happens within our bodies and we release more serotonin. And serotonin it's a mood stabilizer. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to feel happier. It allows us to remain calmer. It allows us to be more innovative, more creative. And these are all qualities that within a business help people to feel like they can be more productive. So that's where the very early ideas of the Happiness Index came in. And then people wanted to buy the Happiness Index from Matt and Chris as a product. So they buy a license to it? It was never designed to be a business. It was just designed to be a tool that helped them internally. But like most problems, if you in business have a problem, other companies are likely to have a problem as well. And that's where the innovation and the creativity comes from. And I was working for a company selling financial technology, and it was a conversation that was a bit out the blue. And Matt and Chris came to me and said, would I be interested in doing this? And running a business was always something that I was incredibly passionate about doing. And I was at a stage in my life where I was just turned 30, and I had a James, my eldest child, was 1. And I just felt if I didn't do it then, it would become incredibly difficult to do, because you then start getting into that kind of career treadmill. And I just decided that it was too good an opportunity not to do. And it was something that, looking back now, it's been 6 years and that's just been incredible. And the business idea that we had at the beginning is nothing like the business we have now. But as you know, with House of Cheer and Happiness.me, you have an idea then that idea snowballs into another one, another one, another one. You start innovating, you start working with partners, and then you start thinking of all of these different ideas that you could have. And yeah, it's just been this incredible journey that we're on. And yeah, there's many more years to come.
Yeah, Tony, I'm going to ask you because, when we started happiness.me, we had no inkling of that something like this, people are also doing something similar in the similar zone anywhere in the world, right? And I had a job, I had a cushy job doing very well. And one fine morning I quit and I decided I just want to be happy. And that's when I started speaking to a lot of people. And I realized that a lot of CEOs and CXOs are not happy. And many of them told me, Raj, you're very courageous. How did you do that? Probably I was in that stage of my life where my daughters have grown up, their education is over. So probably my risk-taking ability was slightly different from some of those people who are not happy. And that got me speaking also to a lot of people. And that's when we started working with a lot of people with behavioral psychology, neuroscience, and things like that. And that's when we Googled to find who can give us the best platform. And that's when we, I don't know whether I've told you this, Tony, but you should know on the show. Once we identified who would be our best partners in giving us the tech platform and best practices and things like that, we shortlisted the Happiness Index. But I must tell you something today, which I never told you so far. We must have sent you some 30 emails. We must have left some 30, 40 voice messages before we got a response. And, and finally we had to send a mail saying we are coming to London. And I remember I was flying back from my daughter's wedding in the US, and Namrata flew from here. We spent the whole day from 9 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. And somehow we just connected, right? And by which time, I just want to know from you, how do you see, because you've seen the happiness.me model and the thing. So what is your view on that? I mean, since now you've been part of it and you've helped us validate it and things like that. So I just want your view on that.
Yeah. So I think that firstly, sorry, Raj, I didn't know that was how many times that you were trying to get a hold of us. And then that bit about, you said that day that we were together and where we just kind of connect. And I think that's really important that we have, there's kind of two things that I think always kind of shape how things develop. One is around the energy that gets created around something. And the other one is around the direction. So how can we drive something forward? And I think that's what I took out of that day was the passion and the enthusiasm that the three of us had in that room. And even though we were in there all day, it felt like it was half an hour. It just went by really quickly. And that's because of the energy, the passion that was created. And then the direction is, we had some pretty big plans in that room of what we actually think that we can achieve that go way beyond just how can businesses develop and how can businesses thrive, but actually what's the difference that we can make to millions of people around the world and the way that they think and feel about working. And I feel really fortunate that I've only really ever had 2 jobs in my life. I don't consider what I do now a job because I've just got so much passion for what we do. Never do I get that Sunday night feeling where I'm concerned or worried about going to work tomorrow because of exactly what we do. And what's really excited me has been working with yourself, Namrata, the happiness.me model, and having a view of what happiness means in different cultures. So something that is in your model that I really like is around gratitude. And gratitude is something that kind of in London and in kind of like Western cultures, we don't really think about too much. It is very important that we're thankful for what we have, but it's not something that is predominantly something that businesses think about. So it's been really interesting understanding in an Indian cultural perspective. And that's what's been amazing about working with you guys and the model that you have is about how there are universal truths. There are things that no matter where you're from in the world, there are things that need to happen around the relationships and the positivity that we have with others. And then there are these subtle differences that just make the world an incredibly interesting and wonderful place that is different from what you would see elsewhere. And that's what I really like about working with the happiness.me model is just understanding these subtle differences that there are.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. And we are very, very excited, super excited, and happy to be partnering with you. And over the last few months, it's taken us almost 12 months for us to finally launch our product. But and it's almost like 9 months from the time we met. So it sounded like pregnancy and labor, and finally we delivered.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Uh, what I want to understand from you, and there are a lot of people here. I can see Navroz Dondi, Ramakant Nayak, and Shivani Gauri, Sanjay Lal. This is the first time I'm able to see the comments on my screen. So as well acknowledge people when I'm here. Uh, uh, so I want to ask you, how sustainable is happiness?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question. And the key behind happiness is that it's about understanding the key moments that are happening around you. And it's just not possible to run at a level of happiness permanently because of what happens within our body when we experience happiness. We'd become too fatigued. We couldn't sustain that level of that permanent state of happiness. But happiness in its own right is something that it comes in moments and it stays with us for our life. And it's about trying to find the joy and the excitement around what we do. And it's about surrounding ourselves with good people. It's about having a purpose within our lives, of trying to understand what is it that we want to do with our lives. And that's where you get this long lasting happiness. And there's two types of happiness as well. So there's type 1 and type 2, and they're not imaginatively named, but the type 1 happiness is about instant gratification. So it's almost things like, that's what I think joy is, that instant gratification of, at a very basic level, should I eat that piece of cake? Should I see this friend? Should I do something that is there and it's in the moment? And then there's the type 2 happiness, which is about the longer term. It's about, that tends to be around our careers, relationships with like our partners, it's having children. And if you have children, there are moments where it is incredibly happy and powerful, and the emotions that you feel as a parent are just unbelievable. And then there are times where your children frustrate you, they make you angry, they're cross. It's not a permanent state of happiness, but the moments that you get are incredibly powerful. And that's what this longer term type 2 happiness is about. And it's not possible just to have type 1 happiness in our life, because if we just had this instant gratification all of the time, we feel like our lives are missing something. So I was really fortunate recently to host an event with a well-renowned psychologist in the UK, and he has this clinic in Harley Street, and we were talking around this, and predominantly the types of clients that he have are supermodels, rock and roll stars, actors, actresses. And for him, one of the biggest things is that is all about type 1 happiness. It's that instant gratification. It's going out 7 nights a week. It's that adulation of being famous. And then there's this empty piece that sits behind, which is what is my life? What am I developing? What am my legacy? What am I going to leave? And that's incredibly important for people to understand, that we need a balance of type 1 and type 2 happiness within our life, because if we have too much of one or the other, actually we're not happy, and you need that balance.
So I can see some names here. I mean, let me just acknowledge. I can see Deepak. Deepak is here, and he says happiness is so important to us. Enjoying the chat. So he's giving you a heads up, Tony. You know Deepak. We met him before. There's Ashok Damankar. There's Neville Tata, and who else? Altaf Sheikh and Paulami Dhawan. So I'm going to ask you now. I've just acknowledged my friends here. So from next week onwards, I'm learning something new, right? I don't have to give a shout out. I can just read out their names from the screen. Tony, so tell me, I asked you this question about how sustainable is happiness. Today, the environment that we are in, people are working from homes, right? And there is a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of fear. And there is also this disconnection because people are not meeting people, the touch and feel is not there, and things like that. And you've done some studies across the globe. I've just read about it, and I've seen your website and things like that.
Yeah.
So, what is the feeling you're getting? What's the feedback? What is the things people are going through at the moment? And once you see that, what do you think needs to be done for them to feel happy at this moment?
Yeah.
Because all those
So
people are watching and who are, who feel, how do I be happy when I can't get out of the house? I've got my own constraints and things like that. So, I want to know what's the studies have shown globally over the last 6 months that we've all been under lockdown. And two, I want to know from you, what should people, individuals do to bounce back or get back into that happy state of mind?
yeah. So you're right, Raj. We've run a study recently around this, and I think what's been really interesting is people feel anxious around the most basic things that we take for granted. So if we look at neuroscience as an example, one of the first things that we will ever react to is, am I safe in my environment? And we take that for granted so often, because the answer to that for all of our lives has tended to be yes. If you go to work, you're going to be safe. And now that has been taken away from people. So that's what drives a lot of the anxiety that sits behind people. And in our studies, what we've been seeing is that people are anxious about traveling to their workplace. So in the UK, it's very common for people to travel by train into the big cities. We see that replicated kind of in the US as well, where people don't feel comfortable going and being on trains at this point in time and commuting into the office. The other part that we're seeing is that we had this piece where when lockdown happened, people started to really enjoy working from home, because for too long they've been going into an office and they may be out the house 12 hours a day, and then they'll come home and they'll spend a couple of hours with their children or their families or their loved ones. They wouldn't have much time to themselves. So we saw this big boom that actually people were really happy to be working from home. But as lockdown's gone on, and in the UK now we've got some restrictions of lockdown, and what's been happening is people have gone too far the other way, where now they feel like they're isolated, they're on their own, they don't see people. And I mentioned balance earlier on between type 1 and type 2 happiness, and actually balance is really important in our lives in all manner of ways, because actually too much of one thing, and as humans we tend not to like it anymore. We want to have an alternative and a change. And so what we're seeing now is more people who are wanting to feel that sense of connectedness and be together again with people. And it's great being able to do Zoom calls, and I know that we do a number of Zoom calls between us, but actually nothing replaces when you came to London and we were with Namrata and we were in the room together, and when we came over to Mumbai and we spent the week with you and the team. And it's that sense of connectedness and that energy that you pick up off of other people that people are tending to miss, and you don't replace that with Zoom calls or webinars. So it's about how can organizations, and just in life in general, how can we create that opportunity for people to feel connected? And I think there's a huge opportunity now for technology to play a part in this, and the video calls are a great way of doing that. But then there are other technologies that I'm seeing out there now where it's about being in kind of an avatar world where you can start connecting with people in a slightly different way. And there's a huge amount for technology to play in this role right now. And I think that's certainly something that we're seeing more and more often in our research, is people are saying that we want to have more FaceTime with people now. And within lockdown, there was always going to be an opportunity for people to reflect and for life to slow down. And that's been really important. And now what we're seeing is in our, because we gather feedback from all over the world, and we're seeing this as a universal trend, not just something that's happening here in the UK, is that sense of connectedness, of being together with people, is something that we're missing. And as humans, we're not built for isolation. If you look at all of our evolution through time, we're built to be around other people. And we now have this enforced isolation, which is incredibly hard for us to deal with. And trying to find ways in which, as organizations, you can connect your people is going to be incredibly important as we move forward.
Yeah, no, I can understand. But there's also this feeling, and we've been speaking to a lot of people now, and there's also this feeling that because people are at home and they are not able to, uh, because people are different circumstances, right? Not everybody has the comfort of having a separate office at home and things like that. And then the whole family is there. So if it's a joint family in the Indian context and things like, they're all living together, right? So, or they have a dog or children or whatever it is, right? They are not able to compartmentalize the time, because earlier you left home at 9:30 and you probably left office at 6:30 and reached home at 8 o'clock or whatever the time. But there was office time and there was personal time. But one of the
Yeah.
things today is it's the lines have got blurred, because so there is this feeling that people are overworking. Is that the feeling that you get? Does the research tell you that? I mean, is that the feedback that you're getting?
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredibly hard for people to switch off. And like you say, it's really important that in the past we've almost had this compartmentalization where I go to the office, I work. When I come home, I'm at home. I'm with my family. I'm with my loved ones, and I can switch off. And that's incredibly difficult now. And you've seen it plenty of times when my kids run in when we're on a Zoom call and they have a little chat. And in many ways, it's really nice that we're able to do that. But then it also makes it incredibly difficult where do you switch off? At what point do you have that physical act of, right, I'm now going to stop working and now I'm going to go and I'm going to be who I am outside of work? And that's really hard. And so there are a number of things that people can do. And part of it is about routine, even just something as simple as go for a 15-minute walk before you start work. Then when you finish work, go for a 15-minute walk. Give yourself that ability to switch off. And I think that just because we stop working at a certain point in time doesn't mean that our brains have had chance to slow down and stop digesting what's been happening in the day. So there's definitely things that we can do. And it's really important for companies to help support their employees through that, because it's incredibly challenging.
And what would be your message to organizations or employees? Well, that's the business you are in, right? I mean, if there are three things that you tell them today in this environment, because obviously it has changed from what it was 6 months ago. We don't know what the future is going to look like. But in today's environment, if you had to say three things that every organization must do, what would those three things be?
Yeah. Okay. So I think the first one is that you've got to treat people as humans and not just a number or another employee. So it's about making allowances for the fact that there will be things that are happening in people's lives that is incredibly stressful, and the situations that people find themselves in now are situations we'd never have even thought possible kind of 6-9 months ago. And so just having that allowance of understanding and that empathy of what people are going through is incredibly strong, because during lockdown at the Happiness Index, we were really keen to stress to our people that they weren't working from home trying to deal with a pandemic. They were trying to deal with a pandemic working from home. And that ever so such subtle difference that actually we were living through a global pandemic that we haven't seen. Things aren't going to be normal for people. They're going to need support. They're going to need to be listened to. We're going to need to find new ways of businesses of engaging with them. So I think that's the first one, is just treating people as humans and not another number. Another one is about giving them the space and the time that they need. And that's something that has always been really interesting to me as businesses, that we've often associated how much work and how hard people work by the amount of time that they spend in the office or at work. And actually, it's not necessarily about time. It's about, well, what's the output that people have been delivering? If they work for 12 hours a day, but they've been incredibly slow in the level of work or the pace of work, that doesn't mean that they're working harder than somebody who's been able to do their work in 9 hours or 6 hours. So actually linking the amount of the value of your team, your employees, your people, to the output that they create rather than the work, the amount of time, is something that's incredibly important. And particularly now more so than ever, where we're working from home and having that trust in people to deliver their outputs. And That's quite hard for organizations, because traditionally we've always worked in a kind of almost like a command and control way of having hierarchies within organizations, and that's really difficult to make that switch of actually how do you measure output rather than time. And it's about having really clear expectations of what the role is, what the outputs are going to be, what are the objectives for the company, the teams, for each individual. And once you have that structure in place, it becomes incredibly empowering for people. So I think that's another thing that companies can do. And I think just to echo the point from earlier, which is probably the third point, which is the most important, is to give people a voice. In an office, it was always easy to understand how people felt, because you could see them and you could pick up on things. You could understand how busy certain teams were. You could understand how people felt. If one of your colleagues was down, you'd normally see it in their body language, and you could have that conversation with them. And now that's just not possible. So being able to give people that voice, that space, that time to be able to connect with other people. So every call that we have at the Happiness Index starts with a very basic roundup of how are people feeling, what are the challenges that they're facing at that point in time, just to give them the space to be able to talk and connect to their colleagues. And I think that that's incredibly important, that people feel like they have a voice, and that just because there isn't this central place where people go to work anymore, that they still feel like they can contribute. They still feel like how they are thinking and feeling is important. And that's something that we see in every day at the Happiness Index. And we have a product called Employee Voice, which is something that we originally used internally because we wanted a way of being able to bring some data and some insight into how people were thinking and feeling, and how could we trend that over time, and how could we see if we could change one thing in the happiness of our employees, what impact did that have on other areas. And so having that space and that opportunity for them to have that voice is incredibly important.
Very nice. I'm going to come back to you because I've got I got Salma Bernard, Anjana Sood, Rachit Thakur, Gaurav Chaudhary, Shaurav Parida, and Raghavendra Rao. So thank you for watching. That's what I can see on the screen right now. Tony, there are a lot of individuals here sitting, and you are the happiness innovator. So tell me 5 things that you tell people they should be doing now for them to have a happy state of mind. 5 things.
Okay. So I think the first one is about looking for opportunities. So at the moment we have a situation going on around us where we feel out of control, that there are things that are being decided by governments and health ministers and scientists around the world, and we don't feel like we necessarily have the control over our lives that we once had. But there are still opportunities out there for us that we can take, whether that be the ways in which we connect with our families, with our friends, whether that be within our careers, the way in which we work. There's opportunities out there, so we should never stop looking for opportunities in the way that we think about the world. There's opportunities for us there. Another one is to think about and just take this time for reflection, and this piece of it around acknowledgement, this bit of understanding how we as individuals are, what we have around us, the relationships that we have with the people around us, and use this time now to have that opportunity to acknowledge around how thankful we are for certain relationships. And if relationships we feel aren't where they should be, use the time and the space we have now to maybe repair some of those relationships. And it's incredibly empowering, where if through no fault of your own time drifts, and it's been a while since you picked up the phone to somebody that you care about, pick up the phone, speak to them, and look for that acknowledgement of the relationships that we have. And I think that's really, really important. I'd say another one is look for something that gives you purpose. And again, this relates back to kind of that opportunity to kind of reflect a little bit, as we've certainly seen the world slow down. we're not all running at 100 miles an hour like we have been previously. And that opportunity for reflection can help us understand what is our purpose and what are our goals and what is it that we want to achieve. And we can do that in this time. It was really interesting that earlier on, I was rewatching the episode that you had with Leandra about how he had this goal. He wanted to be an Olympian. He wanted to follow in the footsteps of his father, and that gave him purpose and meaning and something to go and aim for. And I think it's important that we find things within our lives that drive us and give us that level of direction. So I know lots of people now that are thinking about, actually, what can I do now that's different? What's the purpose? What's the bit that I'm going to do that's going to make a difference to people? So I think that that's important. Another one is look for opportunities for some form of growth, some personal growth. I know loads of people who have started new things because they've had the time and the space to do that. People who are playing an instrument now that they haven't had time to do before. I know lots of people who have started cooking and being really enthusiastic around cooking now, spending time, even if it's as straightforward as trying to learn another language. Look for these different types of opportunities where you get this element of growth. And I think this final piece is, it kind of links back into what we spoke about a moment ago, which is about what can companies do, but also what can we do as well as individuals. And it's about this piece of enablement. And so actually for companies, how can they give people the resources they need in order to perform in their roles? But us as individuals, how can we enable ourselves to be the best version we can be of each other? How do we drive this level of happiness within each other? And it's that element of enablement of not that I have the opportunity to help how I feel as an individual, but happiness can be contagious. We've all been around people where when they enter a room, you just see the room light up and you have that energy that people bring to a room. And we have that all within ourselves, that during this time where we feel maybe we're not in control, or when we read the news that cases are spiking and we're in a second wave, there's a huge amount of negativity in the world, which is unfortunately there and has always been there and will continue to be there. But then there's also this amazing amount of positivity that's there. And if we can enable that within ourselves and others around us, we have this opportunity to make the world an incredibly happy place. And I'd rather spend time and effort looking at that rather than seeing what we're seeing in the news.
Sure. Yeah. But so we need to have hope.
Absolutely.
We need to have hope, and we need to consciously make an effort to bring in positivity.
Absolutely. We can't control what happens around us. We can absolutely control how we respond to situations. And that's something that kind of in the innovation of happiness, something that we try and get across to organizations. We try and get that across into the millions of employees around the world who are using our software, is we all have a way in which we can respond to our environment and the people around us. And we have a choice of how we decide to move forward. And it's absolutely looking for those opportunities where we can take the positives out of life.
And you mentioned people have started cooking and doing things. You can pick up a thing. One of the things which I recommend to people, and I tell this, some of the best universities in the world are offering free courses, in different subjects. And this is your opportunity where you don't have to spend money on tuition fee, and you can get certified program for some of the best universities in the world. So for those of you who don't, you can just Google and you'll find subjects, various disciplines, and you may be able to do that. I've got Ram Kamal Mukherjee, Indrajit Gupta, and who else? These are the two names that have popped up. Deepak and Neil are still there. And so that's great. So, Tony, I'm moving away because you're a happy man, and you built a business around happiness, and you go around spreading cheer and happiness. And that's why we connect. Okay, because we have the same mission. Give me one instance that has been where happiness has been your most motivating factor, and then I will move away from happiness and come back to you.
Yeah. I think it's
that one moment.
yeah, and I think that one point is around my children, because I want to create that happy environment for them. That's where a lot of my joy comes from. A lot of why I am the way that I am, the energy levels that I create, just trying to have that space for them where they can thrive, they can develop, they can make the mistakes that children make, but feel like they're doing it in a safe space. And that's the bit that I always try with, like, we talk about seeding happiness a lot, and it's really important to do that in a business context. But I also think that around my children, of how can I seed happiness within their lives, and how can that be something that they carry forward for the remainder of their lives, where they look back at their childhood, it was full of happiness, it was full of people, laughter, lots of energy, lots of things happening, and just a life that's full of joy. And I think that's the seeding of happiness that that I know my wife and I, is something we're really passionate about.
Good. Is your wife as enthusiastic and happy? Because you're always happy. I've kept whenever we talk, you're always charged. Is she similar DNA? Is it a similar?
Yes, I'd say her outlook is always positive. I'd say that she's a worrier as well. She's in the other room, so I hope that she can't hear me when I say this. But
so be careful what you say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think it's absolutely, yeah. And I think it's we're a perfect balance. And like I say, I've mentioned balance quite a few times here, that I'm very positive. I just want to go and do things. And she's often somebody who helps slow me down a little bit, and maybe makes me think a little bit more about what we're doing and why we're doing something. And then likewise, I'm the one who will just tell her things are going to be okay. This is how things are, and we can find a way through it. So I think if we were both like each other, we'd probably annoy each other. So it's quite nice that we've got that difference.
Yeah. What is the thing she tells you that the most annoying habit that you have?
I'll try and keep this down to one rather than the long list, but I think that it's mainly about telling her everything's going to be okay. Because what often happens is I like to solve problems. So that's one of the great things about innovating and being in that space. We get to play and create and experiment and work out the solutions for things. I think Elizabeth would probably say the thing that she finds frustrating is she'd want to process something first and then find out, all right, let's move on. I've dealt with that. Now we'll find a solution. Whereas I want to solve something there and then. And if there's a problem, we can solve it. And I think that annoys her sometimes, that I don't give her that kind of that space for her to just process something and then work out how she can solve something.
I can relate to you, and I hope my wife is not watching. But she sometimes worries as well, and I'm like, she said, nothing bothers you. You don't react. You're a cool cucumber. You don't get stressed. And I'm like, but I can't do anything about it. What's the point of getting stressed? Let's decide how to react to it. So great. I have Prem Gulati, my favorite person, my ex-colleague from Viacom, and Jyoti Bisla Kasliwal, again, a very dear friend. Sharmila Gupta, Sanjay Lal, Paulami, nice to see you. Thank you very much. Tony, we've got very limited time, so I'm going to ask you, sports enthusiasts, which is your team? Whom are you rooting for?
Yeah, so the two biggest sports that I follow, one is football, and the team that I support is a team called Tottenham Hotspur. It's a team I've supported all my life. My brothers support them. And actually, one of the reasons why I love sports so much is because it's about bringing people together. It's that sense of belonging. It's that when you're little and you go into a stadium and you hear the noise, you see the scale, the size of some of the stadiums, and that's something that sport means family to me. And it means meeting up with my dad, my brothers regularly. It means when I was younger, my parents supported me in all of the sports that we played, and my mum would come and watch me in the morning. My dad would watch my brother in the afternoon. Then one of them would go and watch my oldest brother. So sport is always family to me. And the other one that I'm really passionate about is cricket. And the team that I support is Essex, because that's a county that I grew up in the UK, and they're doing very well at the moment. They've won the county championship for 2 years in a row now. They won the T20 Blast here, and one of the things that I'm really keen to do, Raj, is try and time a visit over to come and watch the IPL with you.
I know. We discussed the IPL, and I told you I will get you. We'll spend an evening together. We'll watch a few matches together. Unfortunately, I mean, it's not my fault, but you can. Now we will be watching it the same way you are watching it. So we'll be, it's happening. But the good thing is it's happening, and I'm sure it'll be quite interesting. Tony Latter, thank you so much for doing this for me today. It was wonderful speaking to you. I could go on, and I want to thank all our viewers, both in the United Kingdom and in India, for watching this live chat with Tony Latter. I hope you got some golden nuggets from what he said. It's a very complicated subject, happiness. I've tried my best to get the best out of Tony. And if you have any questions on this, please send me a mail, and I'll try and get you the answers, because now we are also in the happiness business. Thank you so much, Tony, and love to Elizabeth and the children, and we shall connect soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Raj. Take care.
Thank you.